Hello and welcome to It's Your Business with Mario Toneguzzi. Joining me today is Dan Kelly, President of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. Thanks for joining us today, Dan.
Happy to be with you.
Well, it seems like not a week goes by that the federal government doesn't announce something regarding COVID and support programs. This week, another big week. A couple of things happened. We're going to start first with the Canada Emergency Response Benefit. First, Dan, tell us what were the major changes that you noticed in that program and the implications that has for small business.
Well, look, the CERB program was absolutely necessary during the height of the pandemic. There were lots of Canadians that were losing their jobs. They didn't have a job to go back to at the time, and the EI system was just not able to keep up with the volume of Canadians that were unemployed. Plus, of course, is the fact that it wasn't just employees that were losing their job. Many employers had no income as well, including the self-employed. So there were some supports that were necessary. We credit government for moving quickly. It did, though, create some unintended consequences during the recovery because, of course, once used to the CERB benefit, many Canadians said, geez, I'm not sure if I'm ready to return to work, so why don't I just stick out on CERB a little bit longer? And there were no requirements at all for you to return to your pre-COVID employment. Your benefits would just continue on their own. So it makes sense that government would look to wrap that program up and move it into the EI system. But still, even at this stage, there are lots of people that don't have a job to come back to. Self-employed people, including, many of them still don't have work to draw an income from. So they have created a couple of programs under EI to provide additional supports. The government did, of course, announce that they were going to, put in place a freeze on EI premiums, which does help for the next couple of years. Because we can imagine there are going to be billions of new costs to the system that will not, and there's not enough money in the EI fund to pay for it all.
Yeah. Quick question. What was the major thing with CERB this week? Was the fact that it was extended for 4 weeks? That basically it?
No, well, look, the extending CERB for another month is not our biggest worry. What does worry us the most is in the EI package of changes, they've now lowered the bar to 120 hours per week. 120 hours to be eligible for 26 weeks of benefits. So you could work 120 hours, and that means that you could work full-time for 3.5 weeks, or you could work part-time for 3 hours a week or less, and still then collect 26 weeks of $400 of a benefit. When I was in grade 9, I worked washing dishes at a pizza place in Winnipeg.
Oh, yeah.
And I was making, I think, $3.33 an hour, the minimum wage at the time, back in the mid-'80s. That 3-hour-a-week job when I was in grade 9 would now qualify me to collect $10,000 in EI benefits if I had done that over the course of a year. That doesn't make sense. That's too low a bar. And what I worry about is if a young person that has a part-time job has the choice between, say, $50 a week in part-time hours, or has a choice of $400 on the government program, it's pretty easy to suggest that they might flip over and go on EI rather than stay working.
So Dan, I wasn't planning to ask you this question, but this kind of came up, in your discussion here. A lot of things are all these support programs for people, and then there's talk of a guaranteed income as well. Are we it's probably not a word, but are we demotivating people? The more support programs we have, they're demotivating them from being aggressive and going out and working?
You've hit exactly on our concern. We were already competing as employers with the CERB for employees. People were saying, no, I'm not ready to come back. Now with the EI system, you can imagine an employer's calling back their 19-year-old employee to come back to work at their retail shop or their restaurant. Yeah. And the employee says, well, yeah, I could come back, but you know what? I don't actually even have to work, and I can make more money than I did from work. Why don't I just stay home? And if we do that early in somebody's life, we are really holding them back and not allowing them to learn all of those great skills that you get at the beginning of a job. So
Yeah.
look, if this was just for a short period of time during the pandemic, that's one thing. They've now extended that for a full year, but our biggest worry is that that new lowering of the bar to collect EI may be part of what the Prime Minister is proposing as his 21st century EI system that they're expected to launch at the end of September. If that's the proposal to create a universal basic income basically through the EI system, we are in big trouble. I suspect it'll sap the work ethic of Canadians like nobody's business. And that's something that we should only do after detailed analysis to make sure that we're not creating unintended consequences.
Okay, let's talk about another government program, CCRAS. Let me get this right. Commercial Emergency Rent Assistance Program. So obviously, September 1st is not far away, so more rent collection time coming up. What's your major concern about that program?
Yeah, look, I mean, you're quite right. We're almost at the end of August, so September, landlords are going to be looking for their money once again. Most employers are telling us, most small businesses as tenants tell us that they just do not have money to make their rent because their revenues remain really, really low. But our biggest worry about the SECRA program is that it's not even delivering benefits over the previous months to those that were qualified to receive it. The SECRA program is supposed to work like this. If your income dropped by 70% or more to your business, you were supposed to get a 75% reduction in your rent. 50% of that was going to come from governments, federal, provincial combined, and 25% as a reduction from your landlord. It sounds great, but the problem is that the only one that could apply for the business that was hit hard is the landlord, not the tenant. And as a result, most landlords are saying, you know what, it's just too much paperwork, or I can't afford to take a 25% haircut. So tenant, you're on your own. We need to make sure that the money can get directly to the tenant. If the landlord's not willing to cut their rent by 25%, why should the tenant not get at least the 50% support of the rent from the government share? But right now, that's not possible. We've lobbied the feds to fix the program. It's federal provincial cost shared program. But now we're pivoting and calling on provinces to step in to deliver the support themselves. The first government up said, Saskatchewan actually, we were really pleased. The finance minister in Saskatchewan said, okay, I'm going to try to get the federal government to allow me to use these SECRA dollars that are cost shared from the feds in the province and use that to set up a Saskatchewan program to administer the direct 50% subsidies to tenants. Alberta, we understand, is looking at this. So we've got a meeting coming up with the finance minister in Alberta. BC has also expressed concerns about this. We're hoping to get more provinces across the finish line in picking up the mantle where the federal government has dropped it.
Yeah. This week as well, you folks put out a survey just about the number of businesses that are open, fully open, and also put out what their normal sales figures are, et cetera, et cetera. But the interesting thing I found in there was the warning about the impact that COVID is having on downtown core businesses. Can you talk a little bit about that and what you folks are seeing?
Yeah, look, I mean, the damage that's been done to small businesses right across Canada is immense. Sectors that have been hit hardest are hospitality, retail, the service sector, arts and recreational businesses. Those are the ones that took the biggest hit as a result of COVID. But when we delved even deeper into the data, it was pretty clear that the businesses that were hit, by region, the businesses that were hit the hardest were those in big cities, especially urban downtown areas. This year, it's not that rural businesses in small towns and rural communities were not hit by COVID. They absolutely were. But the bigger the city, the more concentrated the downtown, the business districts have been absolute ghost towns. Those office towers, and of course in Calgary, they were pretty thin to begin with because of the oil price decline. But there have been almost no workers in some buildings for months and months and months. And as a result, the shops and restaurants and the services that are in those communities really are struggling. They just don't have anybody coming their way. At least in the rural communities, small towns, many Canadians have been visiting over the summer months those places because there's a little bit more wide open space. But those central business districts that depend on office workers, those have been hit the hardest. And we need to make sure that there are special measures to try to encourage people to come back downtown to do their shopping, to check out a restaurant. Concerts and other venues, that is festivals that might have brought people downtown are just not there either. So it's been a real bloodbath for many of those firms.
Yeah. One last question, Dan. When you look over the period of time here, since COVID started, really in mid-March, for businesses, what's your feeling today compared to, say, March 15th, in terms of where small businesses are, and in terms of your confidence and optimism about the fate of small business in Canada?
Well, look, certainly there have been some improvements. More businesses are allowed to open, and we're, of course, hoping that a second wave doesn't create another round of shutdowns.
Yeah.
But we've learned an awful lot over the course of the last couple of months about this disease, ways that we can help continue to flatten the curve. And while there has been an uptick in some communities, some provinces, we're hoping that the trend line remains a fairly flat one. But gosh, the damage, the lasting damage that these firms have been hit with is still incredible. Too big an amount of damage in some cases for the business to survive. There are a lot of what I'm calling zombie businesses out there that haven't shut down officially, but and the business owner knows they're just not going to be able to make it for a number of additional months. And that we estimated at CFIB that there are likely to be 160,000 businesses out of business directly as a result of COVID-19.
Yeah.
It can be reduced if we get these government support programs working, like the secret program we just discussed. We have a better chance of keeping that number down, the number that go bankrupt.
Yeah.
But we need consumers to come back to the table as well. Those are the two big things. No business owner wants to live on subsidies. They want to live on sales. But until those sales are back, it's a pretty big gamble. I will say my lasting memory, though, is just how well Canadians, businesses, and individuals have responded. If you think about it, all of us, trying to work as best we can from home or going back to work, but trying to find ways to do that safely. Canadians abiding for the most part by all the rules and regulations and limitations that they've been faced with. It is a real success story in many respects as to how Canadians and Canadian entrepreneurs have responded. But we need support for these businesses if they're going to make it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thanks a lot for joining us today, Dan.
Anytime at all.
That was Dan Kelly, president of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. This has been It's Your Business with Mario Toneguzzi. Thanks for joining us today.